The mining station Kepler 442b hung in the void like a broken tooth against the starfield. Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony Fleet watched through the bridge viewport as his ships surrounded the small human outpost. 12 heavy cruisers against one mining platform. The odds were laughably one-sided. Status report, Vextar commanded, his forearms working the command console with practiced efficiency. His reptilian features showed no emotion as he studied the tactical display. The human station has gone silent, Admiral, reported his tactical officer. No distress signals, no communications attempts. They know what comes next. Vextar nodded slowly. The Terran Mining Consortium had been warned repeatedly to abandon their illegal operations in hegemony space. These humans were stubborn creatures, barely evolved beyond their primitive homeworld, yet they persisted in challenging the established order of the galaxy. Open a channel to the station, Vextar ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the frightened face of a human male. His pale skin glistened with sweat, and his small eyes darted nervously around what appeared to be a control room. "This is Station Commander Jackson," the human said, his voice trembling. We surrender. Please, we have families here. Children." Vextar's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Fear. He could smell it even through the communications link. "Commander Jackson, you and your people have violated hegemony law by establishing this mining operation in restricted space. The penalty is death." "But, we sent requests for mining permits months ago," Jackson pleaded. "We're still waiting for approval from your government." You thought incorrectly," Vextar interrupted. "The hegemony does not negotiate with lesser species. You have one standard hour to prepare your people for execution. Use it wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Around the mining station, the hegemony cruisers moved into attack formation. Their weapons systems hummed to life, charging plasma cannons that could reduce the station to atoms in seconds. On the mining platform, Commander Jackson ran through the corridors, his boots echoing against the metal floors. The station housed nearly 3,000 people, miners, engineers, their families, and support staff. Most were civilians who had never seen combat. "Emergency broadcast to all sectors," Jackson spoke into his communicator. "All personnel report to the central hub immediately. This is not a drill." In the main gathering area, faces filled with terror looked up at him. Children clung to their parents. Elderly miners who had worked the asteroids for decades stood next to young engineers fresh from Earth's universities. "Friends," Jackson began, his voice steadier than he felt. "We're surrounded by hegemony forces. They've given us 1 hour before they attack." Gasps and cries filled the air. "I've sent out a distress signal on all frequencies, but we're 40 light-years from the nearest human patrol. No one is coming to help us." Dr. Sarah Chen, the station's chief medical officer, stepped forward. "What about the evacuation pods?" Jackson shook his head. "The hegemony ships have us completely surrounded. Any pod we launch will be destroyed immediately. We're trapped." In the crowd, Maria Santos held her 6-year-old daughter close. She had brought little Sophia to the station so they could be together while Maria worked as a communications specialist. Now that decision seemed like the worst mistake of her life. "Mama, why are those ships angry at us?" Sophia asked, looking up with innocent brown eyes. Maria struggled to find words. How do you explain genocide to a child? How do you tell your daughter that an entire civilization wants them dead simply for existing? Meanwhile, on the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Vextar reviewed intelligence reports about human capabilities. The files made for amusing reading. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their military consisted of small patrol vessels and a few outdated destroyers. They controlled barely 24 star systems, making them one of the youngest and weakest civilizations in the galaxy. "Weapons charged and ready, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "Excellent. Target their reactor core. I want this finished quickly and cleanly." But, in the depths of space, far beyond the reach of hegemony sensors, something stirred. The distress signal from Kepler 442b had traveled through quantum channels, reaching receivers scattered across human space. In military command centers from Earth to the Centauri colonies, red lights began flashing. General Patricia Morrison stood in the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center, watching as data streams filled the wall displays. The old soldier had gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battles. "How many ships do we have in that sector?" she asked. "None, ma'am," replied Colonel Hayes. "Our nearest patrol is 12 light-years away." Even at maximum speed, they couldn't reach the mining station for 6 hours. "And the hegemony fleet?" 12 heavy cruisers. Each one outguns our best destroyer 3-1. It's a massacre waiting to happen. General Morrison studied the tactical display. 3,000 human lives hung in the balance, including families and children. The hegemony had always been hostile to human expansion, but this was different. This was a deliberate act of genocide. "Ma'am," Colonel Hayes said quietly, "even if we had ships in the area, we couldn't fight a hegemony battle group. Our technology is decades behind theirs." Morrison nodded grimly. The colonel was right. Humanity had grown too fast, spread too thin. Their military was designed for patrol duties and pirate hunting, not full-scale warfare against advanced civilizations. But, as she watched the countdown timer showing 37 minutes until the hegemony attack, something hardened inside her chest. These were her people out there. Her species. Her responsibility. "Get me Admiral Chen at Pacific Fleet," she ordered. "Ma'am, Admiral Chen's ships are in the outer rim. Even if he moved immediately, just get him on the line." While communications linked across the vast distances of space, back on the mining station, people said their goodbyes. Families hugged each other tightly. Some prayed to various gods. Others wrote final messages to loved ones back on Earth. Commander Jackson sat in his office, recording a final log entry. "This is Commander Michael Jackson of Mining Station Kepler 442b. The hegemony has surrounded us with overwhelming force. We've committed no crime except trying to build better lives for our families. To anyone who receives this message, remember us. Remember that we died as free humans, and that we never bowed to tyranny." On the hegemony flagship, countdown timers showed 15 minutes remaining. Admiral Vextar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. After today, human expansion into this sector would stop permanently. Other species would see what happened to those who defied the hegemony. "Admiral," his communications officer called out suddenly. "We're detecting quantum disturbances." "Specify." "Multiple hyperspace signatures. Incoming at high speed." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Reinforce the perimeter. If the humans have sent a rescue force, we'll destroy them as well." The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Sensors strained to identify the approaching signatures. Whatever was coming, it was moving faster than anything in the hegemony database. "Contact in 30 seconds, Tactical reported. All ships, battle stations. Prepare to engage enemy forces." But what emerged from hyperspace made Vextar's blood run cold. Not one ship or two, but dozens. Sleek human vessels that looked nothing like the crude destroyers in their intelligence files. These ships moved with predatory grace, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor plating. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. "The humans don't have ships like these." His tactical officer's voice cracked slightly. "Admiral, I'm reading 73 human vessels. Cruiser class or larger. They're beautiful." Indeed they were. The human fleet spread out in perfect formation, each ship a masterpiece of engineering and design. Their hulls bore names like Indomitable, Defiance, Freedom's Edge, and Never Again. Leading them was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest hegemony cruiser. Along its hull, proud letters spelled out its name, Humanity's Wrath. On the mining station, Maria Santos was holding her daughter when alarms suddenly changed tone. Instead of the death knell they'd been hearing, these were rescue signals. Commander Jackson's voice echoed through the station, "All personnel, remain calm. Human naval forces have arrived. I repeat, human naval forces are on station." Sophia looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mama, did the good guys come?" Maria could barely speak through her tears. "Yes, baby. The good guys came." The human fleet took position between the hegemony forces and the mining station. On the bridge of Humanity's Wrath, Admiral Sarah Chen studied the tactical situation. Her grandfather had been Chinese, her grandmother Mexican, and her own children were safe on Earth because brave people had built a fleet capable of protecting them. Open a channel to the Hegemony flagship, she ordered. Admiral Vextar found himself staring at a human female with steel-gray hair and eyes like winter storms. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy. You are ordered to stand down immediately and withdraw from this system. Vextar's forearms trembled with rage. Human, you face the might of the Hegemony. 12 of our finest cruisers against your ramshackle collection of mining vessels. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Admiral Vextar, I believe you've made an error in identification. These aren't mining vessels. She paused, letting her words sink in. These are warships. And you've just threatened human civilians. Around the Hegemony fleet, the human ships began powering up weapons systems. But these weren't the crude plasma cannons shown in intelligence reports. These were something entirely new. Energy readings spiked off the scales as the human vessels charged weapons that shouldn't exist. That's impossible, Vextar's tactical officer gasped. Those power signatures. Admiral, their weapons are reading at 90% the output of our main guns. And, Admiral Chen continued, her voice calm as death itself, there aren't 12 of us. There are 73. Would you like to recalculate those odds? For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vextar felt fear crawl up his spine. The humans had been hiding their true capabilities. These weren't the primitive vessels his intelligence had described. These were predators. Admiral Chen, he said, fighting to keep his voice steady, the Hegemony controls this sector of space. These humans are trespassing. No, Admiral. These humans are mining legally under Terran Federation permits. But, more importantly, they're human beings. And humanity protects its own. The standoff stretched across space, 12 Hegemony cruisers facing 73 human warships. On the mining station, people pressed against viewports to watch their salvation unfold. Children who had been crying in terror now pointed excitedly at the beautiful ships that had come to save them. Admiral Chen opened a general channel to the human fleet. All ships, this is humanity's wrath. We have civilians to protect and a message to send. Show them what happens when someone threatens human families. Across the human fleet, weapons systems reached full charge. The ships themselves seemed to come alive, their hulls glowing with barely contained energy. They had been built in secret shipyards, designed by humanity's finest minds, and crewed by volunteers who understood that sometimes the galaxy needed to be reminded that humans were not victims. Admiral Vextar stared at the tactical display as his sensors registered weapon locks from every human ship. His 12 cruisers were powerful, but 73 enemy vessels? Even if each human ship was only half as capable as his own, the mathematics were brutal. But it was more than numbers. Looking at the human fleet, Vextar realized these weren't desperate colonists or mining crews. These were warriors. Professional soldiers who had come prepared for exactly this kind of fight. The mining station fell silent as everyone waited to see what would happen next. In the void between the fleets, the fate of 3,000 human lives hung in the balance. The silence stretched across space like a held breath. Admiral Vextar's claws clicked nervously against his command console as he studied the impossible sight before him. 73 human warships hung in perfect formation, their weapons trained on his fleet with predatory patience. Admiral, his communications officer whispered, incoming transmission from Hegemony High Command. The secondary screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Thrax. The Hegemony's military leader was an ancient creature, his scales bearing the scars of a dozen conquered worlds. Admiral Vextar, what is your status? Our sensors detect significant human naval activity in your sector. Vextar straightened, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Supreme Commander, the humans have deployed a fleet to protect their illegal mining operation. I estimate 70+ vessels of unknown class. Thrax's eyes narrowed to slits. Unknown class? Explain. Sir, these ships don't match any human designs in our database. They're larger, more advanced, and their power signatures suggest weapon systems comparable to our own. A long pause filled the channel. When Thrax spoke again, his voice carried a deadly edge. Admiral, are you telling me that the humans have been hiding advanced military capabilities? That appears to be the case, sir. Then, this changes everything. Those mining platforms were never the real target. This was a test. The humans wanted to see how we would respond to civilian targets. Thrakus leaned forward, his massive frame filling the screen. You will engage immediately. Show them the price of deception. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. Around the bridge, his crew waited for orders. 12 hegemony cruisers against 73 human warships. The Supreme Commander's order was clear, but the tactical situation was nightmare fuel. On humanity's wrath, Admiral Chan received her own transmission from Earth. General Morrison's face appeared on the secure channel, her expression grim. Admiral, what's your assessment of the situation? Ma'am, the hegemony fleet is outnumbered 6-1. Their admiral knows it, but they're receiving orders from high command. I don't think they're going to back down. Can you protect the civilians? Admiral Chen glanced at her tactical display. Yes, ma'am. Our fleet positioning gives us complete coverage of the mining station. But, General, engaging the hegemony fleet means we're officially at war. Morrison nodded slowly. Admiral, those are our people on that station. Children, families, civilians who came out here to build better lives. The hegemony wants to murder them simply for being human. Understood, ma'am. You have full authorization to use whatever force is necessary. Send a message that humanity will not be bullied. The transmission ended. Admiral Chen turned to her crew, seeing the resolve in their faces. These were volunteers from across human space. Engineers from Mars. Pilots from the Centauri colonies. Gunners from the mining worlds. Each one had joined the secret fleet program after watching hegemony aggression grow bolder. All stations, battle ready, Chen announced. Tactical, I want firing solutions on all enemy vessels. Communications, open a channel to the mining station. Commander Jackson's worried face appeared on screen. Admiral Chen, thank you for coming. We thought, Commander, take your people to the station's core. We're about to remind the galaxy that humans protect their own. On the hegemony flagship, Admiral Vextar made his choice. Honor demanded that he follow orders, even if those orders meant death. He opened a channel to his fleet. All vessels, prepare to engage. Target the human flagship first. If we can break their command structure, we might survive this. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted, the humans are moving. On the display, the human fleet began a complex maneuver. Instead of maintaining their defensive screen, they split into 3 formations. One group moved to directly shield the mining station. The second formation took high position above the ecliptic plane. The third dropped below it. They're trying to surround us, Vextar realized. All ships, maximum acceleration. We need to break through before they complete the maneuver. The hegemony cruisers lurched forward, their plasma drives carving bright trails through space. But the human ships reacted instantly. What had looked like a slow deployment suddenly became a lightning-fast intercept course. Impossible, breathed Vextar's navigation officer. Their acceleration rates are off the charts. Those ships are pulling 12 GS minimum. The lead human vessels reached firing range first. For a moment, space hung silent. Then, Admiral Chen's voice echoed across all channels, for the children of humanity. Light erupted across the void. The human ships opened fire with weapons that defied everything the hegemony knew about energy projection. Instead of the expected plasma bolts, coherent energy beams lanced out like spears of pure destruction. The first hegemony cruiser, Domination, took 3 direct hits amidships. Its shields collapsed instantly, and the beams punched through armor plating like it was paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the vessel's hull as power conduits overloaded. Return fire. Vextar screamed. The hegemony fleet unleashed its own barrage. Plasma cannons that had conquered 100 worlds spoke in unison, hurling destructive energy at the human formation. But the human ships didn't just absorb the hits, they danced around them. The vessels moved with impossible grace, sliding between plasma bolts while maintaining perfect firing solutions. Their defensive systems seemed to predict where each shot would be before the hegemony ships fired. How are they doing that? Vextar's tactical officer gasped, watching human ships evade concentrated fire from 3 cruisers simultaneously. The answer came from an unexpected source. On humanity's wrath, Commander Lisa Park monitored the battle from her position at the tactical prediction console. She was 24 years old, a genius from the lunar academies, and she could process combat data faster than most AI systems. "Admiral, their tactical patterns are predictable," she reported. "Hegemony doctrine emphasizes overwhelming firepower over maneuverability. They're broadcasting their targeting solutions 2 seconds before they fire." Admiral Chan smiled grimly. "Then, let's show them what human pilots can do with 2 seconds warning." The human fleet pressed their attack. Ships that shouldn't exist performed maneuvers that violated known physics. The dreadnought Indomitable rolled inverted while firing, its guns tracking multiple targets simultaneously. The cruiser Defiance executed a gravity-assisted turn that put it directly behind a hegemony vessel, scoring devastating hits on the engine section. But it was the smaller human ships that truly horrified the hegemony crews. Fast attack vessels named after Earth animals, hawk, wolf, panther, moved like their namesakes. They struck fast and hard, then vanished into the battle's chaos before return fire could track them. "Sir," Vexstar's communications officer called out, "Domination is requesting immediate evacuation. They've lost main power and life support is failing." Around them, the hegemony formation was collapsing. Not because the human weapons were more powerful, though they were impressive, but because human tactics were completely alien. The hegemony had fought dozens of species, but none that fought like this. "They're not following any known combat doctrine," his tactical officer observed. "Every ship is acting independently, but they're coordinated perfectly. It's like they're reading our minds." On the mining station, people pressed against viewports to watch the battle unfold. What they saw defied belief. Their rescuers weren't just winning, they were dominating. Hegemony ships that had seemed invincible now limped through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. Maria Santos held her daughter Sofia, both of them watching the beautiful human ships dance through enemy fire. "Mama," Sophia whispered, "our ships are like angels." Indeed, they were. The human vessels seemed to glow with inner light as their weapons fired, their hulls reflecting the stars like mirrors. But these were angels of war, and their message was written in plasma and steel. Admiral Vexstar found himself facing a tactical reality that his military training hadn't prepared him for. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that fought unlike anything he'd encountered. The humans weren't just better armed, they were better trained, better coordinated, and, apparently, better informed about hegemony capabilities than the hegemony was about theirs. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions," he ordered. "Form up around the flagship." But, as the remaining hegemony vessels tried to regroup, the human fleet demonstrated another capability that sent chills through alien hearts. They didn't pursue the retreating ships with wild aggression. Instead, they moved with calculated precision, cutting off escape routes while maintaining perfect fire discipline. Admiral Chen's voice came across the communication channel, calm as death itself. "This is your final warning. Withdraw your forces immediately, or face complete destruction." Vexstar stared at his tactical display. 3 of his cruisers were dead or dying. 4 more were severely damaged. Only 5 vessels remained in fighting condition, and they were surrounded by human ships that had barely taken any damage at all. But Admiral Vexstar was a soldier of the hegemony, bred for conquest and dominion. Surrender was not in his vocabulary. "Human Admiral," he replied, "the hegemony does not yield to inferior species. We will fight until the last ship burns." "Then, you'll burn," Admiral Chan replied simply. The human fleet began closing in for the final phase of the battle. But, as they moved, sensors across both fleets detected new signatures approaching from deep space. "Admiral," Vexstar's communications officer reported, "massive hyperspace disturbance detected. Multiple contacts incoming." What emerged from the void made everyone's blood run cold. A hegemony battle fleet of staggering proportions. 40 capital ships led by a fortress-class dreadnought that could level entire moons. The massive vessel's communication array activated, and Supreme Commander Thrakes's voice boomed across all frequencies, "Attention human fleet. You are now facing the full might of the hegemony navy. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift." Admiral Chan studied the new arrivals with professional calm. 40 fresh enemy ships against her 73. The odds had just gotten interesting. "All ships," she announced to her fleet, "it appears the hegemony wants to escalate. Show them what happens when you threaten human families. Around the human formation, new weapon systems began powering up. Systems that had been kept in reserve, waiting for exactly this moment. Supreme Commander Thrakas stood on the bridge of his fortress-class dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with ancient eyes that had witnessed the fall of civilizations. 40 of the hegemony's finest warships spread around him in perfect battle formation. Each one was a monument to military engineering, designed to crush any opposition. Status report, he commanded, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. Sir, Admiral Vextar's fleet has been severely damaged. 3 ships destroyed, 4 disabled. The humans are maintaining position around the mining station with 73 vessels of unknown configuration. Thrakas studied the human fleet through the main viewer. He had expected to find crude mining ships and, perhaps, a few patrol vessels. Instead, he faced sleek warships that moved with predatory grace. Their formation was perfect, their positioning tactical genius. These are not the humans from our intelligence reports, he mused. Communications, open a channel to their admiral. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen, and Thrakas found himself looking at a human female with steel-gray hair and eyes like winter storms. She wore a uniform he didn't recognize, bearing insignia that spoke of high rank and hard-won authority. Supreme Commander Thrakas, she said, somehow knowing his identity without introduction. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy. You're trespassing in human space. Human space? Thrakas laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Child, the hegemony has controlled this sector for 3,000 years. Your entire species has existed in space for less than 50. You are insects claiming ownership of the galaxy. Supreme Commander, those insects just destroyed 3 of your cruisers. Would you like to see what we do to Fortress-class dreadnoughts? The challenge hung in space between the 2 fleets. Around the hegemony formation, weapon systems that could crack planets began charging to full power. Defensive screens that had never been penetrated shimmered to life. This was the might that had conquered half the galaxy. But Admiral Chen seemed unimpressed. I'm going to give you the same offer I gave Admiral Vextar. Withdraw immediately, and your crews will live to see another day. Admiral, Thrakas said slowly, you face 40 capital ships of the hegemony fleet. Each one carries enough firepower to glass a continent. Your 73 vessels, however advanced, cannot stand against us. You're probably right, Chen admitted. 73 ships couldn't stand against your fleet. Then, you surrender? Admiral Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. No, Supreme Commander. We're going to show you why humanity doesn't surrender. She paused, touching a control on her command console. Computer, execute Protocol 7. Across the human fleet, new transponder signals blazed to life. But these weren't coming from the 73 ships already in formation. These signals emanated from empty space itself. What in the name of Thrakas began, then, stopped as space around his fleet began to shimmer. One by one, human warships materialized out of nothingness. Advanced stealth technology that had hidden them from hegemony sensors fell away like discarded veils. 50 ships became 100. 100 became 150. The process continued until the void around the hegemony fleet crawled with human vessels. Cloaking technology, whispered Thrakas's tactical officer. But, the energy requirements, how are they masking that many ships? Admiral Chen's voice carried across the comm channels with quiet confidence. Supreme Commander, meet the 3rd Fleet of the Terran Federation Navy. 230 ships, all armed with weapons specifically designed to counter hegemony technology. On the mining station, Commander Jackson stared out the viewport in absolute awe. The space around them had transformed from a battlefield into a demonstration of human military might that defied imagination. Ships that hadn't been there seconds ago now hung in perfect formation, their hulls bearing names like Retribution, Final Warning, and Never Forget. How many ships are out there? Dr. Sarah Chen asked, pressing against the viewport. I've stopped counting, Jackson replied. But, I'd estimate over 200. Little Sofia Santos tugged on her mother's uniform. Mama, why did the good guys have invisible ships? Maria Santos smiled through her tears. Because sometimes, baby, the good guys need to surprise the bad guys. Indeed, the hegemony fleet found itself surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. Supreme Commander Thrakas stared at his tactical display, watching his targeting solutions multiplied beyond counting. His 40 ships, formidable as they were, now faced odds of nearly 6 to 1. "This is impossible," his fleet coordinator reported. "Sir, we're detecting advanced targeting systems on every human vessel. They have firing solutions on all our ships simultaneously." "How long were they out there?" Thrakas demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors never detected their approach." The Supreme Commander's mind raced. The humans had planned this. The mining station wasn't an illegal operation, it was bait. They had wanted the hegemony to respond with overwhelming force so they could demonstrate their true capabilities. "Admiral Chen," he said into the calm channel, "your deception is impressive. But even 200 ships cannot stand against hegemony fortress-class dreadnoughts." "You might be right," Chen replied. "But, Supreme Commander, those aren't our only ships." New hyperspace disturbances rippled across the sensor grid. What emerged made even the massive hegemony dreadnought look small. A human super dreadnought broke through the barrier between dimensions, its hull stretching for kilometers. Along its flanks, gunports opened to reveal weapons of staggering size. "Behold," Admiral Chen announced, "the HFS Unconquerable. Flagship of the Terra Defense Force. She was built for one purpose, to show alien aggressors what happens when they threaten human civilians." The massive ship took position directly facing the hegemony flagship. Its main batteries trained on eternal dominion with the slow, deliberate movement of predators selecting prey. But it wasn't alone. 3 more super dreadnoughts materialized from hyperspace. Their names blazed across their hulls in letters that could be read across star systems: Humanity's Fury, Stellar Guardian, and Earth's Promise. Supreme Commander Thrakas felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest: fear. Not fear of death, he was a warrior, bred for battle. Fear of what this meant for the hegemony's future. "Communications," he ordered, "get me high command immediately." "Sir, we're being jammed across all frequencies." "The humans have complete communications dominance." Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge of every hegemony vessel. "Supreme Commander, your fleet is completely surrounded. Your communications are blocked. Your escape routes are cut off. You have one choice remaining." "And what choice is that?" Thrakas asked, though he already knew the answer. "Surrender. Order your fleet to stand down, and you'll be treated according to the laws of civilized warfare." Around the hegemony formation, human ships moved with clockwork precision. They weren't aggressive or threatening. They simply waited, weapons trained with patient readiness. On the human flagship, Admiral Chan received a priority transmission from Earth. President Martinez appeared on her secure channel, his face grave. "Admiral, what's your status?" "Mr. President, we have a complete tactical victory. The hegemony fleet is surrounded and outgunned. We're offering them surrender terms. What are the odds they'll accept?" Chen glanced at her tactical display. "Unknown, sir. The hegemony has never surrendered to what they consider a lesser species. But they're facing certain destruction if they refuse." "Admiral, the entire galaxy is watching this engagement. Every species that's ever been bullied by the hegemony, every civilization that's been forced to bow to their dominance. What happens here will echo across the stars for generations." "Understood, Mr. President." On the hegemony flagship, Admiral Vextar limped onto the bridge, his armor scarred from damage control efforts on the lower decks. 3 of his ships were gone, their crews either dead or captured by human rescue vessels. "Supreme Commander," he reported, "the human rescue ships have been treating our survivors according to military protocol. No executions, no torture. They're providing medical care to our wounded." Thrakas absorbed this information. It was another tactical surprise. The hegemony would have simply spaced enemy survivors. But the humans were treating captured aliens with dignity and medical attention. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're receiving a data transmission from the human fleet." "What kind of transmission?" "It appears to be intelligence files." "Sir, they're sharing their technical specifications with us." Thrakas stared at the incoming data with disbelief. The humans were literally showing the hegemony how advanced their technology had become. Weapon systems that operated on principles the hegemony scientists hadn't even theorized. defensive screens that could absorb and redirect energy rather than simply deflecting it. Engine systems that bent spacetime itself to achieve impossible acceleration. Why are they sharing this? He asked. Admiral Chen's voice provided the answer. Supreme Commander, we want you to understand exactly what you're facing. These aren't weapons of aggression. They're tools of protection. Every human ship out here was built for one purpose, to ensure that no alien force ever threatens human civilians again. Your technology, Thrakas began, is the result of 50 years of human ingenuity, Supreme Commander. While the hegemony relied on conquest and subjugation, humanity invested in science, engineering, and cooperation. We built these ships in secret not to attack anyone, but to defend ourselves if attacked. The tactical situation was clear to everyone on both sides. The hegemony fleet faced annihilation if they continued fighting. But surrender meant acknowledging that the humans were their military equals or superiors. Admiral Chen, Thrakas said finally, if we surrender, what are your terms? Simple. You withdraw from all human territory immediately. You recognize human sovereignty over our established colonies and mining operations. And you agree to peaceful contact protocols for future interactions. That's all? Supreme Commander, humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We just want to live in it peacefully. But we've learned that peace requires strength. Thrakas looked around his bridge at officers who had never known defeat. They stared at their displays, watching human ships maintain perfect formation while offering mercy to enemies who had shown no mercy to others. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender instructions from the human fleet. Standard military protocols. They're even offering to provide escort ships to guide us safely out of the system. The irony wasn't lost on Thrakas. The humans were offering protection to the very fleet that had come to murder their civilians. It was a level of civilization that the hegemony, for all its technological advancement, had never achieved. All ships, he announced on the fleet channel, this is Supreme Commander Thrakas. We are standing down. Repeat, all hegemony vessels will stand down and comply with human surrender terms. Across the human fleet, Admiral Chen felt a weight lift from her shoulders. No more ships would burn today. No more crews would die. The message had been sent, and the galaxy had heard it clearly. All ships, stand down from combat alert. Begin rescue operations for hegemony survivors. Show them what human compassion looks like. But, as the immediate crisis passed, Admiral Chen knew this was only the beginning. Word of this engagement would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every civilization would learn that humanity was no longer defenseless. Some would respect that strength. Others would fear it. And a few would see it as a challenge to be met. On the mining station, people cheered and cried with relief. Children who had faced death now watched their protectors move with gentle efficiency, tending to friend and enemy alike. It was a sight that would be remembered for generations. Commander Jackson opened a channel to the human fleet. Admiral Chen, on behalf of everyone on this station, thank you. You saved our lives. Commander, Chen replied, you're human beings. Saving you wasn't just our duty, it was our honor. But, in the depths of space, other forces were already moving. The engagement at Kepler 442b had been observed by intelligence networks across the galaxy. Ancient civilizations that had dismissed humanity as primitive insects now scrambled to reassess their threat calculations. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had grown up. And, like many adolescents reaching maturity, they were stronger than anyone had expected. 3 months after the engagement at Kepler 442b, the galaxy buzzed with rumors and speculation. In the neutral trading station of Nexus Prime, representatives from dozens of species gathered in smoke-filled cantinas and private meeting rooms, all discussing the same topic, humanity. Ambassador Krisan of the Alterian Collective sat across from Trade Minister Polvan of the Chinari Federation, their drinks untouched as they spoke in hushed tones. The footage has been verified by every intelligence service in the sector, Krisan said, her feathered head crests twitching nervously. Over 200 human warships, including super dreadnoughts that our analysts say are more advanced than anything the hegemony fields. Polvan's tentacles writhed with agitation. For 50 years, we've been planning our expansion based on the assumption that humans were technologically inferior. Now we learn they've been building a secret fleet that could challenge the hegemony directly? Not just challenge, Kreesan corrected. They forced a hegemony surrender without losing a single ship. Thrakas himself ordered his fleet to stand down. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had viewed humanity as useful trading partners or potential subjects for conquest now scrambled to revise their strategic assessments. The humans had revealed capabilities that changed every calculation. But nowhere was the shock greater than in the hegemony capital of Drakmor Prime. In the towering spires of military command, analysts worked around the clock to understand how their intelligence had failed so catastrophically. War Marshal Kethvar stood before a holographic display showing the human fleet in all its terrible glory. His scarred hide bore the marks of 100 battles, but he had never seen anything like the precision and technology demonstrated at Kepler 442b. Report, he commanded. Chief Analyst Merdos activated her data tablet, her multiple eyes scanning the information rapidly. Sir, we've completed our assessment of human capabilities based on the engagement footage and surrendered vessel scans. The results are disturbing. Elaborate. Human technology appears to be at least 50 years ahead of our estimates. Their stealth systems are undetectable by our current sensors. Their weapon systems operate on principles our scientists don't fully understand. And their ship construction suggests manufacturing capabilities we didn't know they possessed. Kethvar's claws scraped against the metal railing as he processed this information. How is that possible? Our intelligence networks monitor all major civilizations. Sir, it appears the humans have been operating what they call Project Deep Harbor for the past 30 years. Secret shipyards in remote systems, mining operations disguised as civilian infrastructure, and research facilities hidden inside asteroid belts. They've been planning for war. No, sir. Merdos pulled up additional data. Our analysis suggests they've been planning for defense. Every human system we've observed has defensive installations far beyond what's necessary for protection against pirates or raiders. They built this fleet specifically to counter hegemony aggression. The implications were staggering. While the hegemony had been dismissing humanity as a minor annoyance, the humans had been preparing for the possibility of total war. They had done so quietly, officially, and with a level of strategic thinking that impressed even hegemony military planners. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Martinez walked through the halls of the United Nations building, preparing for the most important speech of his career. The Security Council chambers were packed with representatives from every human colony, mining operation, and research station in known space. Mr. President, Secretary of State Williams said as they approached the podium, "Are you sure about this approach? Revealing our full capabilities could trigger a galactic arms race." Martinez paused at the chamber entrance. Sarah, 3 months ago, the hegemony tried to commit genocide against 3,000 human civilians. They would have succeeded if we hadn't been prepared. The galaxy needs to know that humanity will never again be defenseless. He entered the chamber to thunderous applause. Representatives from Mars, the Centauri colonies, the mining worlds, and dozens of smaller settlements rose to their feet. These were the people Admiral Chen's fleet had sworn to protect. Fellow humans, Martinez began, his voice carrying across the chamber, and, to every human settlement in space, 3 months ago, our species faced a test. An alien empire with technology and firepower far beyond anything we were supposed to possess decided that human families were acceptable casualties in their expansion plans. The chamber fell silent, everyone remembering the hours when 3,000 lives hung in the balance. They were wrong. Not just about our military capabilities, but about who we are as a species. When the hegemony surrounded that mining station, they expected to find defenseless civilians and, perhaps, a few patrol ships. Instead, they discovered what happens when humanity prepares for the worst while hoping for the best. On the screens around the chamber, footage from Kepler 442b played in silent testimony. Human ships appearing from nowhere, moving with impossible grace, surrounding a fleet that had believed itself invincible. For 30 years, Martinez continued, Project Deep Harbor has been humanity's insurance policy. Secret shipyards, hidden research facilities, and the finest minds our species has produced, all working toward one goal, ensuring that no alien power could ever threaten human families with impunity. In the audience, Maria Santos held her daughter Sofia, both of them thinking of the terrible hours when death had seemed certain. Now they watched the president explain how humanity had secretly prepared for exactly that scenario. Some will ask why we kept this secret from our own people. The answer is simple: we hoped we would never need it. But, when Admiral Vextar gave those families 1 hour to prepare for execution, our hopes became irrelevant. Only our preparations mattered. The president paused, looking directly into the cameras that broadcast his words across human space. Today, I'm announcing that Project Deep Harbor is officially ending. Not because the threat has passed, but because secrecy is no longer necessary. The galaxy now knows that humanity possesses advanced military capabilities. They know we have the technology and the will to protect our own. Across the galaxy, alien intelligence services recorded every word, analyzing the implications for their own expansion plans. But, this revelation comes with responsibility, Martinez continued. We possess technology that could destabilize the galactic balance of power. We have weapons that could conquer rather than defend. The question is, what kind of species do we choose to be? On the bridge of humanity's wrath, Admiral Chen watched the president's speech while reviewing reports from her dispersed fleet. The engagement at Kepler 442b had been just the beginning. Human ships now patrolled shipping lanes that had previously been dominated by alien powers, providing protection to merchant vessels from all species. Admiral, Commander Park reported from her tactical station, were receiving another distress signal. Chinari transport under attack by raiders in the Vega system. Response time? 40 minutes at maximum speed. Chen nodded. Signal the Melbourne and the Intrepid. Tell them to assist. Show the Chinari that human protection extends to our allies. It was a new philosophy for galactic relations. Instead of conquest and domination, humanity offered protection and cooperation. Their superior technology became a tool for stability rather than expansion. But, not everyone appreciated this new dynamic. In the shadows of the galaxy, older powers watched humanity's rise with growing concern. The Eternal Dominion had been the most powerful single vessel in known space. Now it sat in a hegemony repair yard, its hull scarred by human weapons, its crew traumatized by the experience of facing technological superiority. Supreme Commander Thrakas walked through the ship's corridors, seeing fear in the eyes of warriors who had never known defeat. Sir, Admiral Vextar approached, his own armor still bearing scorch marks from the battle. The repair crews estimate 6 months to restore full operational capability. And our intelligence on human fleet deployment? Limited, sir. They've positioned ships throughout the sector, but their stealth technology makes accurate counts impossible. We estimate at least 500 active vessels, possibly more. Thrakas stopped at a viewport showing the shipyard's activity. Around them, dozens of hegemony vessels underwent repairs or modifications, all based on lessons learned from the encounter with human forces. Admiral, in 3,000 years of expansion, the hegemony has never faced a species that combined advanced technology with what these humans called moral principles. We know how to fight conquerors and defend against raiders. But, how do we respond to a species that uses superior firepower to protect rather than dominate? It was a question that plagued military planners throughout the galaxy. Humanity had revealed capabilities that could crush most civilizations, but they used that power to enforce peace rather than expand territory. It created a strategic puzzle that traditional military doctrine couldn't solve. On the mining station at Kepler 442b, now renamed Freedom Station in honor of the battle, life had returned to normal with one significant change. The station had become a symbol of human resilience, attracting visitors from across the galaxy who wanted to see where humanity had announced its arrival as a galactic power. Commander Jackson stood in the observation deck, watching human patrol ships maintain their protective cordon around the facility. Children who had faced death 3 months ago now played in corridors that had echoed with despair. The transformation was remarkable. Commander, Dr. Sarachin joined him at the viewport. We've received another group of alien visitors requesting tours. Representatives from the Altarian Collective want to see our miracle of survival, as they're calling it. Jackson smiled. Doctor, I don't think it was a miracle. I think it was planning, preparation, and people who refused to let us die alone. The children are asking about the battle again. They want to understand how the ships appeared so suddenly. Tell them the truth. Sometimes, when good people are in danger, help comes from places they never expected. And, sometimes, that help has been preparing for exactly that moment for a very long time. But, in the depths of space, new threats were stirring. Species that had observed humanity's technological reveal were making their own preparations. Some sought alliance and cooperation. Others planned challenges to test human resolve. The engagement at Kepler 442b had ended the galaxy's ignorance about human capabilities. What it had begun was something far more complex, a new era where the balance of power would be determined not just by technology and firepower, but by the principles that guided their use. Admiral Chan received the alert on her private console. Long-range sensors had detected massive fleet movements in unexplored sectors of the galaxy. Ancient civilizations that had remained hidden were suddenly active, their ships moving toward human space with unknown intentions. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity's strength. Now it remained to be seen whether that strength would bring peace or war. 6 months after Kepler 442b, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. Human patrol fleets maintained peace in sectors that had known only conquest and exploitation for millennia. Trade routes that had been dominated by hegemony tribute collectors now operated under human protection, allowing smaller civilizations to prosper for the first time in generations. But, in the depths of uncharted space, something ancient stirred. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's wrath, studying long-range sensor data that defied explanation. Her fleet had been conducting routine patrols in the outer rim when they detected energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. "Commander Park, what's your analysis?" she asked. Lisa Park worked her console with practiced efficiency, her young face creased with concentration. "Admiral, these readings suggest massive technological activity in the void sector. Power signatures that dwarf anything we've seen, including our own super dreadnoughts." "How massive?" "Ma'am, if these readings are accurate, we're looking at vessels the size of small moons. And there are dozens of them." Before Chen could respond, her communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, priority transmission from Earth Command." President Martinez's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grave. "Admiral, are you monitoring the void sector disturbances?" "Yes, Mr. President. We're seeing unprecedented energy signatures." "Sarah, we've been contacted by a species calling themselves the Eternal Consortium. They claim to be the galaxy's original inhabitants, and they're requesting immediate negotiations with human leadership." Admiral Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Sir, how old are we talking about?" "According to their message, they've been dormant for over 1,000,000 years. They're awakening now because our engagement with the hegemony triggered automated monitoring systems they left throughout the galaxy." The implications were staggering. While younger species like humanity and the hegemony had been fighting over territorial disputes, an ancient civilization had been watching from the shadows. Now they were revealing themselves in response to humanity's display of technological advancement. "Admiral," Martinez continued, "I'm ordering all fleets to defensive positions. We don't know their intentions, but if they've been dormant for 1,000,000 years, their technology could be beyond anything we can counter." As the transmission ended, Admiral Chen turned to her fleet coordinator. "Signal all ships. We're returning to Earth immediately. And send word to the hegemony, they need to know about this too." Meanwhile, Supreme Commander Thrakas received the same intelligence on his rebuilt flagship. The Eternal Dominion had been upgraded with new defensive systems based on lessons learned from the human encounter, but even those improvements seemed inadequate against million-year-old technology. "Sir," his intelligence chief reported, "we're confirming the human data. Multiple massive vessels emerging from what we thought was empty space in the void sector. Our best estimates put their individual mass at over 50 times our largest dreadnought." Thrakas stared at the tactical display with growing dread. The hegemony had spent centuries conquering younger civilizations, but they had always known older powers existed in the galaxy's unexplored regions. They had simply never awakened them. "Communications, open a channel to the human Admiral Chen." "Sir?" "The humans defeated us through superior technology and tactics. If we're facing something that makes their capabilities look primitive, we need allies, not enemies." On Earth, emergency sessions convened in capitals across the planet. The revelation that an ancient civilization had been monitoring galactic activities for 1,000,000 years changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Director Sarah Kim of the Terra Defense Forces Strategic Assessment Division addressed the Emergency Council. "Based on preliminary analysis of their technology signatures, the Eternal Consortium possesses capabilities that exceed our own by several orders of magnitude. Their ships alone appear to operate on principles that our physics can't explain." President Martinez leaned forward. "Director Kim, what are their intentions?" "Unknown, sir. Their initial communication simply requested negotiations with the species that forced evolution through conflict resolution. They seem to be referring to our engagement with the hegemony. They've been watching us? Apparently, Mr. President. Their message included detailed tactical analysis of the Kepler 442b engagement, including insights into human decision-making that our own strategists hadn't considered. In the Nexus Prime trading station, panic had replaced the usual busy commerce. Representatives from dozens of species huddled in emergency meetings, all trying to understand what the awakening of an ancient power meant for their civilizations. Ambassador Kreesan of the Altarian Collective found herself in an unlikely alliance with Trade Minister Polvan of the Chinari Federation and even hegemony representatives who would have been shooting at them months earlier. The humans revealed that the galaxy's power balance was an illusion, Kreesan said, her feathered crests drooping with exhaustion. Now it appears even their revelation was incomplete. What do we know about this eternal consortium? Asked Polvan. Hegemony Intelligence Officer Trelmos activated a holographic display. Ancient references in our oldest archives mention a species called the First Builders. They supposedly created the hyperspace lane network that connects all inhabited systems. Most historians considered them mythological. But, if they're real, Kreesan realized, they've been controlling galactic infrastructure for 1,000,000 years. They could shut down faster than light travel entirely if they wanted to. The thought sent chills through every representative present. Without hyperspace lanes, galactic civilization would collapse in a matter of weeks. On the human mining station that had started it all, Commander Jackson received evacuation orders from Terra Defense Command. Freedom Station was to be temporarily abandoned while humanity determined whether the ancient awakening posed a threat to civilian populations. Sir, Dr. Sarachin approached him in the command center. The children are asking why we have to leave. They don't understand. Jackson looked out at the human patrol ships that had protected the station for months. Soon, those vessels would be recalled to defend Earth itself. Doctor, sometimes when you change the galaxy changes back. We forced the hegemony to acknowledge our strength. Now something stronger than both of us has decided to take notice. But, as evacuation ships arrived to ferry civilians to safety, something unexpected happened. Alien vessels began arriving at Freedom Station, not to attack or threaten, but to offer assistance. Altarian rescue ships carrying human families. Chinari transports providing safe passage to human colonies. Even reformed hegemony vessels offering protection during the evacuation. Species that had been enemies or strangers 6 months ago now came to humanity's aid in their moment of uncertainty. Commander, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a general transmission from the approaching alien fleets. They're saying they stand with humanity. Jackson stared at the display showing dozens of alien vessels from across the galaxy, all converging to protect human civilians. Doctor, maybe we changed more than we thought. In the Void Sector, the Eternal Consortium's massive vessels completed their emergence from whatever dimensional pocket they had occupied for 1,000,000 years. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering beyond mortal comprehension, their hulls bearing designs that seemed to bend reality itself. On the flagship, Eternal Wisdom, beings of pure energy contemplated the galaxy they had awakened to find. The observers had monitored galactic development for millennia, watching species rise and fall according to predictable patterns of conquest and collapse. But, the engagement at Kepler 442b had been different. For the first time in their vast memory, they had witnessed a species use superior power to protect rather than dominate. The humans had revealed technological capabilities that could have conquered half the galaxy, then, used those capabilities to enforce peace rather than expand territory. The statistical models did not predict this outcome, communicated Observer Prime, its thoughts rippling through dimensions. Species that achieved technological superiority invariably used that advantage for territorial expansion. These humans appear to operate on principles we have not encountered. Perhaps, suggested Observer Secondary, it is time for direct evaluation rather than passive monitoring. The first face-to-face meeting between humanity and the Eternal Consortium was arranged on neutral ground, a space station constructed specifically for the encounter, using technologies from both civilizations. President Martinez led the human delegation, accompanied by Admiral Chen and representatives from every human colony. But they weren't alone. Delegates from the hegemony, the Altarian Collective, the Chinari Federation, and dozens of other species requested permission to observe. What had begun as a meeting between humanity and an ancient power had become a galactic gathering. When Observer Prime materialized in the meeting chamber, its energy form coalescing into something resembling physical matter, the assembled delegates witnessed their first glimpse of true cosmic intelligence. Humans, it communicated, its voice resonating directly in their minds, you have awakened us after 1,000,000 years of dormancy. We have observed your species for less than a century, yet you have accomplished what we thought impossible. President Martinez stepped forward, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Observer Prime, humanity is honored by your attention. We seek only to understand our place in the galaxy and to protect our people. Your species achieves technological superiority through cooperation rather than conquest. You used that superiority to defend rather than dominate. You transformed conflict into alliance. These behaviors contradict every model we have developed for species evolution. Admiral Chun spoke next. Observer Prime, we learned early that survival required unity. Our homeworld taught us that diversity creates strength, that protecting the weak serves the strong, and that peace requires preparation for war. Show us, Observer Prime commanded. What followed was the most comprehensive demonstration of human values in galactic history. The delegates described humanity's response to the Kepler 442b crisis, not just the military engagement, but the rescue operations for hegemony survivors, the medical aid provided to wounded enemies, and the diplomatic initiatives that had followed. They explained Project Deep Harbor not as a weapon of conquest but as an insurance policy against extinction. They described the human philosophy of peace through strength and protection through cooperation. But, most importantly, they showed the results. Shipping lanes that had been dominated by pirates now operated safely under human patrol. Species that had been subjugated for generations now traded freely under human protection. Former enemies like the hegemony had become partners in maintaining galactic stability. Observer Prime processed this information for what felt like hours. When it finally responded, its communication carried overtones of something resembling amazement. In 1,000,000 years of observation, we have never encountered a species that achieved power and chose restraint. You have demonstrated that evolution can produce wisdom rather than mere dominance. The ancient being paused, consulting with its companions through channels beyond mortal comprehension. We offer you a choice, humanity. We can provide you with technologies that would make you masters of the galaxy. Weapons that could defeat any enemy, ships that could control any system, knowledge that would make you gods among mortals. The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Every delegate in the chamber held their breath, waiting for humanity's response. President Martinez looked at Admiral Chen, then at the representatives of species that had come to stand with humanity. Finally, he turned back to Observer Prime. We decline your offer. Explain. Power without responsibility corrupts. Knowledge without wisdom destroys. We've seen what unlimited power does to civilizations, it turns them into the hegemony, or worse. We choose to remain what we are, protectors, not rulers. Observer Prime's energy form pulsed with what might have been approval. Then, you have passed the final test. For 1,000,000 years, we have waited for a species mature enough to refuse godhood. You are that species. What happens now? Admiral Chen asked. Now, Observer Prime communicated, we return to our dormancy. But, we leave you with this knowledge, the galaxy is in the hands of guardians rather than conquerors. For the first time in cosmic history, that gives us peace. As the ancient beings departed for their dimensional refuge, they left behind something unprecedented, a galaxy where the strongest power had chosen to serve rather than rule. Human fleets continued their patrols, protecting trade routes and defending the weak. Former enemies worked together to maintain the peace that had been bought with wisdom rather than weapons. On Freedom Station, now permanently established as a symbol of human values, Commander Jackson watched ships from dozens of species dock peacefully at his facility. Children who had once faced genocide now played in corridors that welcomed beings from across the galaxy. Maria Santos, now the station's director of civilian affairs, stood with her daughter Sophia watching the stars through the observation deck. The little girl who had asked if the good guys would come now helped welcome refugees and travelers from species she had never imagined. Mama, Sophia said, did we really save the galaxy? Maria smiled, holding her daughter close. No, baby. We just showed the galaxy how to save itself. In the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians of a principle that had proven stronger than any weapon, the idea that power existed to protect, not to dominate. The galaxy had learned that sometimes, the greatest strength comes not from the ability to destroy your enemies, but from the wisdom to help them become friends. And, in the cosmic silence between stars, ancient beings slept peacefully for the first time in a million years, knowing that the galaxy was finally in worthy hands.